Okay, so there's a new report out from the World Meteorological Organization, and frankly, it's a big one. It confirms a reality that is, well, deeply concerning. Asia's climate is changing at a rate that is both alarming and unprecedented. So, we're going to break down the crucial findings from this report and really explore what they mean for a continent that's home to over half the people on Earth. So, right off the bat, the headline finding is just wow. It's a real shocker. The data is crystal clear. Asia is warming up at twice the global average. Let that sink in. This isn't some far off prediction. This is what's happening right now. It basically puts the entire continent on the absolute front line of climate change. And all that accelerated warming? Well, it led to exactly what you'd expect a brand new and pretty sobering record. The WMO has now confirmed it. 2024 was officially the hottest year ever recorded for Asia. And look, this isn't just another tick on a chart. It's a whole new and, frankly, alarming benchmark for what's happening. Okay, so these are some big headlines, right? But what does it all really mean? Let's get into the weeds a little and unpack the actual data behind this crazy fast warming. All right, so in 2024, Asia's average temperature was 1.04 degrees Celsius higher than the average from 1991 to 2020. Now, you might hear that and think, what's 1 degree? But think about it. That baseline, the normal we're comparing it to, ended just a few years ago. It's a huge jump in a very short time, and it really shows you how fast this whole situation is ramping up. And if you need more proof that things are speeding up, here it is. The warming trend we saw from 91 all the way to 2024, it's almost double the rate of the 30 years before that. So the key thing to get here isn't just, oh, it's getting warmer. No. The real story is the speed. The pace of this change is what's truly off the charts. So all this extra heat has to go somewhere, right? And it's having a devastating effect on what scientists call the cryosphere, basically all the frozen parts of the continent. The easiest way to think about this is to picture the huge Himalayan glaciers as Asia's water towers. I mean, these are the source for the massive rivers that literally billions of people rely on. We're talking drinking water, farming, industry, their entire survival, really. And the numbers coming out of places like the central Himalayas and the Tian Shan Mountains are just stark. Get this. Out of 24 glaciers that are being closely watched, 23 of them are losing a significant amount of ice. 23 out of 24. That's practically a total retreat. We're watching one of the planet's most important water sources just vanish. And this super fast melting isn't just about losing ice. It creates this whole cascade of really dangerous problems. So in the short term, you've got a much higher risk of things like landslides and these terrifying events called glacial lake outburst floods. They call them geolufs. They're basically sudden, massive, catastrophic floods. But the long-term threat? That's just as scary. We're looking at the potential collapse of water security for billions of people who live downstream. Okay. So all this extra heat, this extra energy, it doesn't just hang out in the mountains. It gets into the atmosphere and basically supercharges it. And that's when you start to see the kind of wild, extreme weather that people feel in their daily lives. Let's take one example, cyclones. 4 tropical cyclones spun up over the North Indian Ocean. And we're not talking about just any old storms. These were powerful, really destructive systems. And where do they get their fuel? From warmer ocean water, which is a direct result of this whole warming trend we've been talking about. But it wasn't just the big, noisy storms. Sometimes the most dangerous threat is the one that's silent. And in this case, it was the relentless, oppressive, record-shattering heat. And I mean, we're talking about numbers that are legitimately life-threatening. Temperatures were pushing 50 degrees Celsius. That's 122 degrees Fahrenheit. And this was happening in super densely populated areas, like Uttar Pradesh in India. This goes way beyond uncomfortable. This is a full-blown public health emergency. So to really understand how all these continent-wide trends actually play out on the ground, the report gives us a really interesting case study. It zooms in on India in 2024. And this is where things get really fascinating, because you find this kind of paradox. If you just look at the total amount of rain from the monsoon, on paper, it looks normal. But the way that rain fell was completely different. The intensity was above normal. What that means is the rain came down in these short, super intense, destructive bursts. And that's exactly how you end up with massive floods and landslides, even during a supposedly normal monsoon. So all of this really boils down to one huge, unavoidable question.
This WMO report lays out in stark detail how the climate is becoming more and more unstable across Asia. And remember, this is a continent that's home to 60% of the entire human race. The data is clear, the trends are, well, they're undeniable. So the question we're left with isn't if things are going to change, they already are. The real question is, what happens when the climate of a place that so much of the world depends on becomes this unstable?